Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, and I'm excited to give you a first look at the not one, not two, not three, not four, but five grade one races taking place on Travers Day, of course, highlighted by the feature race, the Travers. 8 horses. We're going to get into it. Can the filly Torpedo Anna get the win? But listen, before that, make sure to press that like button on this video and subscribe to the NYRA Bets YouTube channel to get all of our great content. We have individual Travers spotlight videos. We're going to have a ton of individual race previews with all of our NYRA analysts throughout the week. We're going to have a great capping the card with DRF's David Aragona. It's going to be a lot of content all week for the Travers. But listen, we also got Tuesday night fun at Assiniboia Downs, educational handicapping and betting tutorials, and so much more. So press that subscribe button. Well, listen, they just drew the card for the Travers. I'm recording this on Sunday afternoon. The past performances should be out Sunday evening. And wow, what a card, up and down, even outside of the graded stakes races. It is still a loaded card, and excited for this 14 race card on Saturday. Now let's talk about these 5 grade ones. We're going to go through each of them, spend a little bit of time talking about initial reactions. Quite frankly, I'm probably most excited for the H. Allen Jerkens. That field is absolutely loaded. I can't wait to talk to you about that one. And of course, the feature, the Travers Stakes. Well, listen, let's talk about the Forego, which is, of course, one of the grade ones, 7 furlongs for 4-year-olds and up. This is a really interesting race, and it's drawn some interesting horses into it. You see a horse like Gun Pilot for Steve Asmussen, who I think is a very accomplished horse and has some top end talent, I think, needs to kind of have that breakthrough win, but certainly has the ability, draws the inside rail. That can be a challenge sometimes. Is going to need to show a lot of early speed to avoid getting shuffled back. Obviously the horse that everybody's going to be drawn to is the number 4 in this race, and that's Baby Yoda. Talk about a horse for a course. The horse loves Saratoga. Now, it didn't run particularly well last time out. And that's been an issue with Baby Yoda throughout his career, that he is an inconsistent horse. And that sometimes when he takes that step up to that grade 1 company, he's not quite there. And so even though he got that big grade 2 win earlier this year during the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga Racing Festival weekend, still, you never know with this sort of grade 1 competition, whether he's going to bring his A game. Bill Mott, I think the trainer, has done an outstanding job of managing him and putting him in spots where he can be successful. And he's done that throughout his career. And he usually tries to give the horse a little confidence boost after a poor performance. The fact he's going straight back into a grade 1 tells me Bill Mott probably sees that this horse is training pretty well going into this race. I think a horse that might be a little under the radar is Run Classic for Jose D'Angelo. Really like this horse a lot. Went over and actually ran in Maidan. Now is going to be second back from running over in the Golden Shaheen. So I think that's a horse that could be a little bit dangerous. Second start in North America after that long international trip earlier this spring. And I have a lot of confidence in Jose D'Angelo's barn. Always followed him from his time down in South Florida. When he brings horses up here, they're usually pretty live, and he's not going to spot his horses in a place that he doesn't think they have a legit chance. Of course, the horse a lot of people are going to look to is the number 6 Mulligan for Rudy Brissett. Rudy's got a couple of really good sprinters, and we're going to talk about one of those in the H. Allen Jerkens. But Mulligan's a horse that's just won, the last 3 races this year. Is probably going to be the horse to beat. We'll see what David Aragona ends up making in terms of the morning line, but is likely going to be your morning line favorite coming into this race, having, like I said, won the last 3 times out. Phil Bauer with Anchor, Phil Bauer has had a lights out Saratoga meet. He doesn't enter a ton of horses up here. I think he's only had 10 entries. He has 5 wins. He's got a couple of close seconds. He's been turning out live runners all meet. So I don't think you can discount anything from that barn. And then a horse that I've always been a big fan of, going back, probably 18 months, 24, almost 2 years, is Cagliostro for Cherie DeVaux. This one is a hard-trying horse. I think the 7 furlongs is probably the right distance for this horse. Draws the outside post. I kind of like that. Always root for Cherie. She has a lot of success up here at Saratoga. Another trainer who always gets the most out of her mounts and out of her rides. So I have a lot of confidence in Cherie that Cagliostro is going to show up in a big day, having last run down at Churchill Downs. But Forego going to be a very intriguing race. Well, let's move to the Sword Dancer, which out of all of the races might be the race where you see the weakest overall grade one field. But I would say it's only because of the dominance of one particular horse. And that is, of course, the 4 Silver Knot, who seems to have taken this massive step forward from 3 years old to 4 years old for trainer Charlie Appleby. And this horse has just been incredible. I set the track record last time out, going 1 mile and 3/8, now going 1.5 miles on the turf. And he just looks so tough in this spot to get around because he's so versatile. He can go up front. He can take him gate to wire. He can go to the lead and do that. He can track. He can close a little bit. He's got the sort of versatility, and it's a relatively small field. So you don't really have to worry about being hooked wide or going around 3 turns. That's not going to be an issue. So I think Silver Knot, listen, he's going to be clearly the horse to beat. I wouldn't even be surprised if he's even money, maybe even lower in terms of his post-time odds. Now, Appleby's got another horse in this race, Measured Time, and then you see 2 Clement horses. Christophe Clement has Soldier Rising and Far Bridge. Far Bridge is a horse that, I think I was probably higher on last year and just has not necessarily put together all the performances I would have suspected that he was going to when I first saw him debut a couple of years ago. Soldier Rising, if you want to put money on a horse to finish second, man, that's your horse. I mean, Soldier Rising, that's kind of what he does. That's his MO of coming up just short, but always is a very honest runner, obviously draws an advantageous post in these marathon turf races. That inside post position will be able to save all of the ground going around the 3 turns. But like I said, Silver Knot is such a tough customer in this spot and is a horse that has really just blossomed into a superstar for Charlie Appleby. And over the last few months, I've been, I want to say critical, but I've certainly been noting that some of Appleby's horses are more beatable than they have been in the past. When he initially would bring horses over to North America, he was winning at a 42-43% rate in grade 1 and grade 2 races, basically. Last 18 months, that number's been down to 26%. Now, listen, as I joked with somebody in the paddock the other day when we were talking about this, I'd love to win races at a 26% clip if I was a trainer, and especially grade 1s. He's still having an incredible amount of success, but it is interesting. You see where his horses are coming from overseas now. A lot of times they're coming in from Maidan. They're not necessarily coming in from over in the UK. That's, I think, a fascinating development. Appleby's really struggled the last couple of years with Royal Ascot. I think there's been a lot of speculation that maybe they haven't found the next superstar sire after Dabawi. I mean, Dabawi's still around and with us and producing, but there's this kind of concern that perhaps Godolphin doesn't quite have the crop and doesn't quite have the stable of freakishly good turf horses that they used to. That said, Silver Knot, one of those freakishly good horses. Cinderella's Dream, another one, a 3-year-old filly that Appleby has, absolutely incredible. Those two are really special. But like I said, in this race, Silver Knot, could end up being a horse that a lot of people single in a sequence, because I think there's some races where you're going to feel very spready and you're going to need to get skinny somewhere. I think this is a logical spot. Of course, we always talk about zigging when other people zag, right? This is the logical place to single. Well, the way you turn a profit is to not single here, but actually single someplace else where other people are going to spread, etc. So sometimes you got to play that game theory and turn things around on their head a little bit. But this is a very tough horse to get around in the Sword Dancer. Well, let's talk about the Ballerina handicap, the third of the 5 grade 1s, going 7 furlongs for 3-year-old up fillies and mares. We have another 8-horse field here. And this might be another spot where people maybe try to single, looking at the number 3, Vava, for Cherie DeVaux. I already mentioned how much respect I have for the DeVaux barn, and Vava at this 7 furlongs distance, she's just too good. She just can track anybody down. 6 furlongs, I think she's vulnerable. I think even at 6.5 furlongs, she might be vulnerable to a horse that can get out up front and just go. and really be speed of the speed. But at 7 furlongs, she just has that stamina and she has that sustained run, and it's just so tough to get. But this is a very, very good field. I think the real interesting one is Scylla for Bill Mott, cutting back to 1 turn. This is a horse that, you look at it, would have presumably wanted to get as much distance as possible, is kind of bred for 2 turns, but is now cutting back to 1 turn in this spot. That's an interesting horse, has good early speed, but again, we have to wait and see kind of how she runs in this spot. This is a new thing for her to kind of run on around 1 turn race at this level, but certainly an intriguing horse. Could be a little bit of a price there. Chad Brown's got a couple of nice horses, A Seed and Sheeta Booty. A Seed is a horse that, I think is kind of burns money sometimes. I think A Seed is a very, very good horse, but I think just, it has a tendency to get over bet occasionally just because of where she's spotted and doesn't always come through. So I do think that's a little bit of a concern. Sheeta Booty's a horse that I actually really like quite a bit in this spot. I think she's an interesting one. She's going to be the bigger price of the two for Chad Brown. And again, a horse that had been on the Oaks Trail last year, going 2 turns. Chad brings her back, cuts her back. She immediately comes back with a win in a stakes race. So she's got some talent there for sure, going 7 furlongs. I think this is a good distance for her. The other two that I think are fascinating in this field are Society for Steve Asmussen and Positano Sunset for Ian Wilkes. I like both of these horses. Positano Sunset's going to be more of a price. Hasn't won the last couple of times out. Did come in second last time out, I believe, in the Chicago Stakes. So this one has some talent, has some ability. Society, a really fast horse, and maybe the biggest challenge to Vava. But last time they faced off, Vava was able to get that win. Society not being able to get her. And so, again, how are the dynamics going to be any different this time around? Society, very good early speed, though, can get out there. And depending on how the rest of this field shakes out in terms of what everybody's decision is in terms of to go, to rate, to sit a little bit further back, she's going to obviously try to get out there up front. Money's Gold on the far outside might have something to say about that, of another very fast horse on the far outside. 7 furlongs might be a little bit more of a tricky distance for her. I think she's better at 6, but we'll see. We'll see how the track is playing on Saturday, et cetera. We're expecting relatively good weather all week. So that's something to keep in mind. So it's just, like I said, a lot of great racing here with these grade 1s. And like I said, Positano Sunset could be a little bit of a price. It's a horse I just always really like. And I'm just interested in seeing how she sets up in this spot. She likes to come from off the pace. So the more speed there is in the race, the better it's going to be for her. But she's one who's going to come running late. Now, the track up here at Saratoga has not been kind to closers in dirt sprints. Over the entire meet, only 9% of dirt sprint winners have come from more than 3 lengths back at the half-mile mark. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to bet on a closer, it's really not been happening. We've seen closers get up, hit the board, but just not be able to get the win. All right. Well, let's talk about the race that, like I said, I'm maybe the most excited about, which is the H. Allen Jerkens Memorial, 7 furlongs for the 3-year-olds. This field is stacked. This is, if you want a good betting race, this is not a good betting race. This is a great betting race. This might be the best field that we have had this entire Saratoga meet. And this is one of the best fields you're going to see in racing this entire year, in my opinion, outside of the Breeders' Cup. 11 horses, so many great names in this. You have world record coming off a huge win, a dominating win in the Amsterdam for Rudy Brissett, drawing the inside rail. That horse drew the inside rail in the Amsterdam, got the blinkers on for the first time, and broke like a rocket and just never looked back. This horse is freakishly fast. He's a special type of runner that day. He was 6-1. You might actually get a good price on world record, despite how impressive that last race was in the Amsterdam, just because of how loaded this field is. Then you got Speakeasy, a horse that a lot of us believed was a potential Derby horse at one point this year. This was a horse that was entered in the Fountain of Youth for Todd Pletcher, scratched out of that race because of a minor injury, came back last time out, really had to be ridden hard in an allowance race, but clearly hit his best stride late. And it was a very nice effort off the bench. It was a fast race. It came back with a strong buyer. And so Speakeasy, another one who looks very tough in this spot. Domestic Product, who we saw in the Kentucky Derby, the winner of the Tampa Bay Derby, winner of a sprint race, a Created Stakes sprint race as well. This is another horse who loves that cutback now to one turn. Very tactical speed in terms of, gives the jockey a lot of versatility, has a little bit of early speed, but generally likes to sit a little bit further off the pace. That's a really fine horse in his own right for trainer Chad Brown. Then you got Bob Baffert bringing in Prince of Monaco again from California. This is a horse that's an incredibly fast horse. Again, 7 furlongs. Can he do it at this distance? Maybe. He's always been a horse that I thought was maybe a little bit more distance limited to 6 and 6.5, 7 possible, but he's another one. Serious horse, serious speed. A lot of great races in his back pocket. Then you get Timberlake. This is maybe the most intriguing horse in this race because this is a horse that won a bunch of races at Oaklawn Park this year for Brad Cox. Went down there and won one of the Derby preps and finished third then in the Arkansas Derby. But what made this so curious was the horse went to the bench then for a period of time. And you had heard Cox even admit, well, this might become a miler. He might become a one-turn horse. But then he came back and ran in the Haskell. It was a curious spot for him to come back in, to come back and run a mile and an eighth. That was not what you would have expected necessarily, especially when the trainer had said earlier, we're going to cut him back. Well, now we're having him run in a grade 1, going 2 turns off the bench. He ran fine that day. He ran third. He made a move at the top of the stretch and, just faded a little bit because, again, I don't think he's a 2-turn horse, but you cut him back to 1 turn. He's legit. He's a serious, serious horse at 1 turn. He always has kind of had that look of a 2-turn horse, but he runs much more like a 1-turn horse. So I think he's a really tough customer in this spot. Auto the Conqueror, this is a horse that just tries to run his eyeballs out every single time up front. Really dangerous horse for Steve Asmussen. I like Auto the Conqueror quite a bit, actually, as maybe a long shot to use underneath. And then, listen, you got to talk about the top 3-year-old in this division, I would say, which is Bookham Dano, who came up just short to Forever Young over in the Saudi Cup overseas. Comes back, wins the Woody Stevens, and in such impressive fashion, sitting behind those absolutely blistering pace and then making a move and tracking down the leaders that day. Coming off a little bit of a maybe subpar performance, some might say, last time out, almost losing in a New Jersey bred race at Monmouth Park. But the horse that almost beat him that day, Little Knee, on the far outside, he's in this race too. So those two are coming back to face off against each other. I think Bookham Dano was a real, that number still came back pretty strong. And that was an example of, I think Little Knee was just better than people thought. And he got out up front and got bold and got brave. And we've seen it before. When a horse gets up front and they're loose on the lead, stranger things have happened. And Bookham Dano didn't get the best trip that day. It was only a 4-horse field, and yet somehow it seems like he found trouble in every step. So, but he's one, obviously, you got to take pretty seriously. The New Jersey bred, we always root for those type of smaller state bred horses. Really looks tough. Reynolds Channel, Jefferson Street, both very talented runners. Jefferson Street coming off that second 2-world record last time out. He was the overwhelming favorite in that race. So obviously a horse that has a lot of talent. 11 horses in this race. I just talked about 8 or 9 of them that I think have legitimate chances of winning this race. This is a great betting race. If you have a strong conviction in this race, this is one where you want to press it because you can really make yourself some money in the process of doing that. Now let's talk about the headliner, which is, of course, the Travers, going 1.25 miles for the 3-year-olds. And we got to start with the filly because she drew the inside rail. Torpedo Anna, then Sierra Leone, Unmatched Wisdom, Corporate Power, Batten Down, Honor Marie, Dornick, Fierceness. That's your field of 8. Torpedo Anna on the inside rail. Does this help her? Does this hurt her? Depends who you listen to. She's got good early speed. I don't know if she's got the early speed to get in front of, nor do I know if she wants to get in front of Dornick and Fierceness. I think those two from the outside have to go, right? They don't want to be caught wide going into the first turn. Dornick is going to go. And there's a chance maybe he rates off of a horse like Unmatched Wisdom if he decides to go, or Batten Down, Bill Mott's horse, if he decides to go. Those two also have good early speed. So those four horses are going to try to go out there up front. Now, Torpedo Anna, she's got good early speed too, and she's going to hold that rail position. I think the key for her is if she gets out of the rail and she gets out of the post well, she gets up into the first turn. I think the ideal spot for her would be sitting third, probably behind Dornick and Fierceness in that pocket trip, and then being able to have the flexibility at the top of the lane to make a decision. Do you go outside? Do you try to make the inside move? Remember, she's got Brian Hernandez Jr. aboard. What did we see him do with Mystic Dan? He saved every inch of ground in the Kentucky Derby on that horse. And he's very much so from the Calvin Burrell School of Riding. The quickest way to the finish line is on the inside rail. And so Brian's going to give this horse a ground-saving trip, I think, in that kind of pocket position in that third spot. I don't think that's a bad place for her. I think the question is, where does Unmatched Wisdom and Batten Down fit in this race in terms of the early pace scenario? Because like I said, they both have very good early speed. Unmatched Wisdom coming off a win in the Curlin Stakes, where he was really pressed for some early fractions and was still able to hold off Corporate Power, who's a stakes winner in his own right, having won the Sir Barton 2 races ago for Shug McGahee. He's a horse that also has shown a lot of maturity, but one that likes to rate a little bit more off the pace, can track, can sit mid-pack, doesn't need to get up to the lead. But Batten Down is the other speed horse in this race for Bill Mott. We saw him go gate to wire in that Ohio Derby, where he was setting some pretty strong fractions on the front end without even being asked to do so or being pressed by another horse. Where do those two fit? Where does Unmatched Wisdom, where do Batten Down? Where do they fit? Can they get to the first turn ahead of Fierceness and Dornick? Is that their game plan? Because if that's their game plan, it really throws everything into a little bit of a conundrum. Because then where does Dornick go? How far wide does Fierceness get hung? I think that's just the issue that you have there. Theoretically, I don't mind the outside post for Fierceness because that's kind of a similar post than he had in the Jim Dandy. He could carve out theoretically the same type of ride he had in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, sitting off lone speed, basically. And he doesn't mind doing that. He can sit second. Can he sit third? Can he sit fourth? The verdict's still out. And the verdict, by the way, is probably not. He really needs to be up front. Now, the other concern is if Johnny V wants to keep him clear and goes, listen, even if we go 3 wide, the key is I can't get this horse behind other horses. I got to float him out wide. Well, now you're giving up ground going 1.25 miles. And quite frankly, I don't think Fierceness is a 1.25 miles type of horse. I think he is 1.125 miles. The end of that Jim Dandy, his stride was shortening up. Okay. Now, he held off Sierra Leone, and it was a heck of an effort. He earned a 103 buyer in that race, ran really, really well. All credit to Fierceness. But a couple of things. One, you can't shake the good, bad, on, off issue that he has with his running lines, where you get one good race, one bad race, one good race, one bad race. Well, he's coming back on less than a month's rest, and now he's going to run a longer distance than he has since the Kentucky Derby, and it's going to be a challenge for sure for him in this spot from that far outside post. Now, like I said, if he and Dornick can cross and clear the entire field, and they can sit on the inside rail, and Fierceness can sit just off, that changes things. But if Unmatched Wisdom and Batten Down try to muck it up on the front end and they try to get out there and really press the pace, then I think it presents, honestly, an opportunity for a horse like Torpedo Anna to sit just behind that pace and let that develop in front of her. She can rate off the pace. She's not had an issue with that. She was able to do that in her maiden victory and debut. She's been able to do that before. She broke poorly, if you remember, in that Coaching Club America Oaks. Brian Hernandez got her up there. Didn't really need to ask her. She just kind of got up and into that second position in a rather short field. But again, the inside rail, going to save all the ground. Now, that also, we're talking about all this speed in this race. That theoretically sets up for 2 horses. One, Sierra Leone, the other, Honor Marie. Sierra Leone, listen, the horse has never been out of the trifecta. He's only been out of the exacta once, which was in the Belmont Stakes, where I would argue he was running against the track as much as the other horses that day. But he's a horse with some quirks, right? We've seen him weave all over the place coming down the stretch. They've changed the bit on the horse a couple of times to try to give Flavien Prat more control. You remember Chad Brown switched jockeys after the Kentucky Derby from Tyler Gaffalione to Flavien Prat. Prat's going to be back aboard again, but this is a horse that has all the talent in the world. A $2.3 million son of Gunrunner who finished third in this race several years back to Arrogate. This is a very, very good horse. And when he walks in the paddock, he looks the part. He looks like a 2.3. You know where your money went if you bought Sierra Leone, because he looks the part. He's got that big, long stride. He should appreciate the distance. He should appreciate the pace setup as well. And I can't help but think Chad Brown's other horse, Unmatched Wisdom. I'm not saying he's in here to be a rabbit by any stretch of the imagination. He won the Curlin. He absolutely deserves to be in this spot. But I can't help but think Chad's not upset that he's got two horses that really do, juxtapose each other quite a bit in terms of their running style, with Unmatched Wisdom being a front runner, Sierra Leone being a closer. The more Unmatched Wisdom presses that early pace, the more it sets up for Sierra Leone, who should appreciate that distance coming down the stretch. So I think a really compelling race. And then you have Honor Marie, who's been kind of a hard luck horse. He's a horse that always seems to find trouble and just has bad trips, sometimes not even kind of within his control. The start of the Kentucky Derby, he got ping-ponged back and forth about 5 or 6 times coming out of the gate, and that race was over in the first 150 yards. So it's just one of those things. This is a smaller field now, but he is like Sierra Leone. He is going to come from all the way in the back. The question is he better than Sierra Leone at doing that? Now, I think he likes the distance. I don't think that's going to be an issue. Florent Geroux, the jockey, is going to need to figure out kind of the path to take to get there. Does he try to get the jump on Sierra Leone? Does he try to make the move first? Because if you're telling me who's the better closer between Sierra Leone and Honor Marie, it's Sierra Leone. So how's Honor Marie going to carve out the winning trip? Is it to get in front of Sierra Leone early and then make the first move to try to get up there and maybe hope that Sierra Leone does what he tends to do, which is, kind of come up just short? We'll see. Honor Marie hasn't won since he was a 2-year-old in the Kentucky Jockey Club, and that race has not come back particularly strong, but we've seen him run well. Ran second to Catching Freedom in the Louisiana Derby. The course clearly has talent. Then you got Dornick, and I don't know what to do with Dornick to some extent in this race. For trainer Danny Gargan, jockey Luis Saez, all Dornick does is win. He won the Belmont, he won the Haskell, and he's a stubborn son of a gun when he's up on the front end. If he gets to the lead, it is really, really hard to get by him. We saw it happen in the Belmont with Mindframe. Mindframe got his head in front of Dornick in the stretch at the Belmont Stakes up here at Saratoga. And you know what Dornick did? Put the ears back. We're going. You want to fight? I got a fight for you right here. And he goes right at him. He's a gutsy horse. He's a horse that likes to get challenged by other horses. You do not see that often with front runners. Front runners tend to, once a horse gets in front of them, they tend to either flatten out or pack it in. And you do not see Dornick do either of those things. He gets tougher when that happens. And you saw it happen in the Haskell as well. Timberlake puts a head in front of Dornick. Then Mindframe puts a head in front of Dornick. Doesn't matter. He fights back both times, gets the win. Can he do 1.25 miles again? He already did it once up here in the Belmont, so he's got experience with this trip at this track. That is, Andy Sterling pointed this out on the broadcast on Sunday. That is historically unusual that any runner in the Travers would have previous experience going 1.25 miles over the track up here at Saratoga because, of course, we've never had the Belmont Stakes up here before, let alone at 1.25 miles. So a really fascinating race. Can Dornick withstand a strong pace pressure and still dig in and win against some of these horses like Sierra Leone, like Honor Marie, like Torpedo Anna? Can Fearson's put together back-to-back wins and back-to-back quality efforts? Can the filly do it? I will say this about Torpedo Anna. I saw her work out on Saturday. I saw her in the paddock on Sunday. She looks absolutely phenomenal. She is, ears are pricked up, muscles are rippling. She's posing for pictures with everybody who walks by. She is ready to go in this race. And Ken McPeak has her ready. Her final workout, 59-4, 5 furlong work. She was tugging and, just under a tight stranglehold coming down the lane in that race, was still easily outworking her partner, Elko County. And that was a really impressive effort, I thought, just watching it visually in the morning. But listen, Dornick looked really good. Fierceness, I will say, the other day in the paddock, came out for a little bit of paddock training. Fierceness looked better at that paddock training, in my opinion, than he did walking into the paddock for the Jim Dandy. When he walked into the paddock for the Jim Dandy, I had picked him to win that race. And I thought, yikes, I might not be so smart about this. Well, he ended up bailing me out and he won that race. But he looks better. He looks like he put on really good weight in the time in between the races, which has always been an issue with him, carrying weight. He certainly looks the part now. He looks tough as well if he continues to work out the way that he has to this point and bounce back from that race. But again, he's not a horse that's ever shown the ability to overcome adversity, which is the opposite of Dornick, who always overcomes adversity and tends to know how to respond to that. Now, the one thing I'll say about Dornick is if he does not get the lead, then he's not going to be the horse for you. Now, he can sit second. He did that in the Belmont because if you remember, Seize the Gray went out up front that day, and Dornick rated and tracked right off of his flank, basically, and was right there within a half length. So he can do that. But if he gets shuffled back somehow to third or fourth and he has to track behind horses, he has not shown the ability to do that. All you have to do is look at that Bluegrass Stakes where he finished fourth that day. So again, wow, I could talk about this race for another hour. So many interesting developments, so many interesting dynamics in this race. The strategy of what Brian Hernandez is going to do on the inside rail with Torpedo Anna, how Unmatched Wisdom and Batten Down are going to have an impact on the early pace scenario with Dornick and Fierceness on the outside. Can a horse like Honor Marie upset the world a little bit? Can Corporate Power, a horse that I think is super talented and just hasn't quite figured it out yet, can that horse, Shug McGahee, the trainer, he's won this race 4 times. He knows how to win the Travers. He's got a good horse here. Can he do that? A lot of great stuff. Listen, thank you so much for tuning into this first look at the Travers Day stakes races. Got a lot more coming for you all week on NYRA Bets YouTube, whether it's individual race previews with our analysts, whether it's full card analysis, whether it's the spotlight videos. We're going to have some fun Torpedo Anna content, a little bit of case for and case against. It's going to be a lot of fun leading up to the Midsummer Derby here up at the Spa. Well, listen, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you it's now post time.